Boom. We are rolling. Okay. So the last shot, um, which was not really covered in a video, I'm looking for my mouse right now because Krita tends to like to make it disappear. It's a fun little trick it likes to play. Let's take a look. Okay, so here's this shot, and what happens is quite a bit actually. He says, Lucas says, I've been looking for him all day. Okay. That gets us to where we are here. He turns around and says, thanks, Mel. Okie dokie. So what we're going to do is we're going to deal with this in reverse, because the pose, if you will, that is being used for the storyboard is in fact where the shot ends, not where the shot begins. So no big deal. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give him a little bit of a weight shift like that, and his arm is up with monkey mounted on his arm. Okay. Monkey might be slightly large right there. So, boom. Okay. Okay, so what I did on a previous shot, well actually the shot we just looked at, was I went ahead and did a breakdown and worked out the timing all in a single frame. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that here, mainly because the only action that we have is really Luca turning around, spinning around, if you will. So he's turning in 3 dimensions, which makes the action a little more complicated. Normally when you try to do a breakdown with that type of motion, it quickly turns into a mess. Actually. It turns into a bunch of scribbles, and it's hard to really discern what you did. So for me, I think the sensible thing would be to convert the storyboard image into a pencil test, and I'm just going to animate it in reverse, and then I'll just reverse the keys. Okay, so since I am at 24 frames a second at this point, I'll go ahead and just leave it there, and let's do this to start with. Let's take this silhouette and this silhouette, which are kind of hard to see, but we're just going to Control X, Control V. So now the silhouette of Mel and Tianara are locked on a single layer. Now I can animate on this layer with impunity. Okay, so I'm basically going to do 3 poses, maybe 4. I'm giving him, well, if I give him a half a second to turn around, let's go ahead and put in a key here and just play with this. I'm not going to use onion skins. Not a huge fan of onion skins. If I have tweening going on that's more or less linear, then onion skins can definitely be useful. But okay, so now one interesting thing about this shot that I hadn't thought of before I got here is that Monkey's going to get winged around pretty aggressively here. Actually, so let's, what I'm going to do here, the way I'm thinking about this is, I want to have a pose here that has pretty good integrity on its own as a standalone pose. And then we'll figure out how to glue the two poses together. So I'm drawing the back of Luca's head, which obviously he has this fez. It's good to flip your canvas frequently. It's actually really smart to flip your canvas. Okay, so now one thing I see that's a little problematic is I'm kind of feeling like his collar's a little bit low. He's got a fairly bulky collar. Okay. I don't think, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out just a little bit so I can see better. The way I have Krita set up is quite useful in that the hotkeys for flipping the canvas is M. Next frame, next and previous keyframe are the two, I don't even know what you call these, greater than, minus than signs. And then the slash key is what switches me between my eraser and my pencil, as you can see over here. It basically toggles between the last two brushes you use. So most of what you need to knock out a pencil test is kind of all there in one place, you might say. Okay, so I'm just gonna little silhouette of monkey here, and why don't we go ahead and put his tail in there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, just for fun, well, on threes, it's kind of difficult to do an ease in and an ease out unless you leave the center frame out and halfway through just stretches for a full quarter of a second, which is kind of debatable whether that will work. But let's see how this plays in reverse. It's probably going to work. Okay, so again, just for fun, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert a key here and a key here. So I'm deliberately putting in some easing, just basically for the fun of it, for the challenge of it actually. So I'm going to say, boom, let's put his hand here. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, something just... How the heck did I end up on that layer? You silly goose. It's weird, I didn't hit the page up button, but okay. We're just going to pretend that didn't happen. Okay, so now I'm going to actually stretch Monkey's head right here. Okay, so, and by the way, just so you know, I have to actually, let's do this. Let's go ahead and reverse it now so that everything's happening in the right direction, because any squash and stretch that I do is going to actually be very non-intuitive if I work in reverse, because it's going to be completely going against inertia, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's just kind of do it this way. Okay. And then I'm thinking we'll probably add some secondary animation of monkey's tail. If we were going to indicate that here, we'd wind up with something like this. And we can go ahead and let it stretch. Okay, so now we've got his head here. So I think broadly speaking, we can essentially leave Luca's head where it is. Okay, so we've got the curvature here, which becomes this. Okay, I'm just going to kind of assume that's what happens. And now a really key question is what happens with this guy's shoulders. And I'm going to say his shoulder, this shoulder is getting left behind. And then it's going to whip around to here. Okay, which means his arm's going to be something like this. Okay, now this is up. Okay, so let's look at the curvature of his whole body. Whips all the way around. Okay. So yeah, there's definitely a quick, I'm going to raise that up just a little bit. And then just give the indication of where his belt line is, because it really doesn't change. Because again, he's just rotating around three-dimensionally, which is basically the hardest thing to animate in my opinion. So let's just say so it's interesting in that the basic dimensionality of his body doesn't change at all. So let's say we'll give the head that curvature there, and here he's like this, so here we'll go like this. Okay, so we're looking at the back of his head here, so you can see what's going on here is we're leaving out essentially a tween in the middle deliberately. We'll see how it works. It might not work, you know. Okay. Boom. This tween is going to be a little questionable, but I'm going to go with it. Let's just put in an indication of his hand. Okay. And I'm allowing a little bit of squash and stretch to happen here, which I don't usually do too much. No, I think that'll work. I'm making faces again. You can't help it when you're animating. Okay, so now we got the collar. Here's the bottom of the collar. So the collar's kind of drooping a little bit here on this last frame. Let's see if we can make it play. I might have to change this last drawing and maybe just choke it up a little bit. Or, alternatively, we might want to consider is just doing that. That's probably the better plan. Okay. So, here. Okay, let's see how it plays. Ready? Go. Thanks, Mel. Okay. Doesn't quite work. Let's insert a, let's go with the old complete set of tweens and just see what happens. So here to here we got an elbow, don't we? So there's an elbow, and the elbow's kind of leading the action, leading the force of his weight. So I'm going to go ahead and jam it back there. And let's let's just say there's the old fez. Okay, monkey's sliding around there, so here, this should be kind of interesting. So there's where he lands. I'm sorry, that's not where he lands. That's where he lands. Okay, so there's hand, hand. Let's push the hand out here, right there. And I'm actually going to have a little fun with this and indicate monkey's hands there, sort of hanging on for dear life. So you can kind of see what's going on. Let's see what happens. Perfect. No, I don't know if it's perfect, but it feels pretty good. And then obviously what we want to add here is 1, 2, 3. Yep, just gonna see if it kind of works. Yeah, and we could add more tweens pretty easily with the tail if we wanted to go ahead and stretch that out. Okay, so how long did that take? 18 minutes to get the basic breakdown. So I'm going to give myself, for this shot, since we have quite a bit of animation, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes. So I got 10 minutes to tighten this sucker up. Well, what matters the most? These contours. So wrist, wrist. I want to get this stuff nailed now. Let's not dink around. Okay, wrinkle, wrinkle. Boom. I want it to be sufficiently crystal clear what we're supposed to do when we ink it. And by the way, that means that I'm adjusting my penciling style so that it's actually marching perilously close to my inking style, actually. Okay, collar, 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 collar. Okay, boom, boom. Shoulder. Belt. Okay, let's get this contour here. Don't need to worry too much about the details in that, as long as we just give the indication that the belt does in fact sort of force his garment in a little bit. Okay, that worked. Boom, boom. Okay, so this is a big part of what I've been trying to teach myself lately, is how to take this stuff that is pretty clear conceptually in your head what you're trying to do, but then translate that into the actual contours that are going to get animated with clarity quickly. Why? Why this obsession with speed? I'm less obsessed with speed than I used to be. It's more just the fun of it. It's the challenge of seeing if I can do it actually more than anything at this point. Okay, so here this arm is really going to be a bit of a blur right there on this shot. Doesn't matter much. It's a tween. It's going to go by fast. All right, here his arm is elevated and it's actually going to be lost behind here. So in terms of an easily readable silhouette, we're kind of sacrificing that here to a degree. The argument being that it's all moving by so fast that you're not going to notice it anyway. At the end of the day, the important thing is really this shot where we want to be able to clearly see Monkey. And his silhouette is quite clear. So this extra key here, in terms of what I did with his garment and arm, really, I'm just going to actually delete those so they don't confuse things. Okay. Now, let's deal with this guy's face. 1, 2, 2, 2. It's essentially round. He's got sort of his Charlie Brown head going on. Okay, this tween is going to be pretty forgiving. It's only going to be on the screen 3 frames. Okay, and I'm going to have him find his point of attention here. And we actually do have a bit of squash and stretch going on Luca's face. That's okay. This is not, Dave doesn't know how to draw Luca. Luca is a little bit distorted because he's really in motion. Okay, and Luca always tends to be pretty cheerful. Okay. And if we land here, we'll go ahead and put a little bit of what I would consider to be a somewhat interesting expression on Monkey's face. He's a little winded by that quick spinning around that just took place. Okay. Now the question becomes, is it in fact ready to ink or not? I would say so. I mean, everything about Monkey's expression is just going to repeat. The only thing that changes in these last 2 keys is his tail. How we're going to ink and draw his collar's pretty clear. And again, pretty forgiving too. Normally, what I've been finding is, this is probably what you want to do here, is actually drag this back and make a dupe so that we have a ½ a second window to breathe. But I would say that that is working, and that's a solid 4. I'm sorry, I was going to say, I'm thinking lip sync. It's a solid 8 frames a second on 3s animation. Worked pretty well. Okay, and then so he's going to turn around here, and then let's just say, okay, so we'll call this hello. We'll call this Luca pencil test, and then just for completeness, we'll put in lips, and we'll insert a key here, and then just say whoa, boom. Right here we'll insert a key, and he's just going to say thanks, Mel. So big wide mouth. Thanks, Mel. Okay, this is set to 100 frames at this point, which is a bit silly. Let's drop it back to 72. Boom. Okay, and actually I'm going to save it again so that I actually save the correct thumbnail. Did it save or did it not save? It did not. I guess I have to change something in order to get it to save. That's okay. I'll just go to this initial frame and put a mark But then I need to jump up here, and that way, as you can see, my storyboard updated. Cool. Okay, so now, yeah, I mean, I'm still under 30 minutes, so the only question mark now would be, are there any details that I have neglected to clarify such that when I go to ink this thing, I'm going to go, oh, what the heck did I intend to do there? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and tighten up these lines. His hand can be pretty vague. Okay, a little bit of a, almost a shruggy action here. That's cool. The hands, again, they're in motion, so we don't have to deal with the details on the hands too much. You want to put your attention where it matters. And basically, until he hits this pose, you know, this is pretty straightforward. So, okay, and another thing I could do, but I'm not going to necessarily clarify here, would be I could take the liquefy tool, and maybe I'll just put this in here so that it's clear that it's going to happen later. I'm just going to do that so that there's some indication that there's sort of a bit of a rubberiness going on with poor monkey as he bounces around. Yeah, and again, we could put in 2 more tweens to just sell that action settling down on monkey with his tail and stuff. I think as Luca is saying his line, probably. Okay. All right, one more time through. Actually, let's flip the baby around. Okay. I have less than 3 minutes to finish. Okay, and I'm actually going to liquefy this. I mean, Luca is a young kid. I don't want to make him seem too mature in his physique. Okay, flip it, rewind. Thanks, Mel. Okay, that's it. There's our pencil test. Ink and paint should be pretty straightforward. And not bad for 30 minutes. I would venture to say on this particular shot, I would guess the ink and paint would take another 30 minutes, which I'm not going to do right now because I got some other stuff I need to go do. And painting the background should be a doddle. Now, the good news is this shot, and then you've got this response shot, which is a 2-shot with Mel and Tianara. So it goes, oops, didn't mean to do that. No, I don't want to save changes, you goofball. Alright, so we got this shot, and as you can see, this shot is this shot. Is, one could argue, this shot, so we could pull a close-up out of it. But this will be easy because this one's just dialogue, so we've got, I've kind of done the hard work here. Once the background's done, it's going to get me through at least 3 shots, and then 1, 2, 3. And then we cut to close-ups of these 2. And then some back and forth. So once we get through this little exchange here, which there's quite a bit of acting involved because Mel's like getting real dramatic for reasons I won't explain right now. But by doing so, he winds up offending her, at which point she reveals her true identity. And maybe I was a little harsh, you think. Then they hear somebody coming, and then we're into the stuff that's already been fully animated. So that's where we're at. And we did it with 10 seconds to spare. As you guys know, there will be more later.